Welcome back to another episode of the Grassroots Tennis Podcast, a platform created to entertain, educate, and grow the game of tennis at all levels. My friends call me Ship, but this show isn't about me. We will be bringing you interviews with coaches, community leaders, and players, along with updates about tennis happening around the world. Tennis is a culture, and we are all writing tennis history together. Today, I am here with AJ Catanzariti. AJ played for Texas A&M, and he is currently attempting to make a career on the pro tour. I actually came to know about AJ through his new podcast that he started with some of his friends called the Changeover Podcast. And if you've not checked that out yet, you definitely need to do so very soon. AJ, welcome to the pod.
What's up? Glad to be here.
So this is the collision of two very new podcasts, and I'm excited about it.
Yeah.
Hopefully what everybody will do after they hear this, my people will go and they will like your page and vice versa. Hopefully we can get some double dips on some shares.
My opinion on it, and the reason I first off, I didn't start the changeover. The changeover was originally, I think, Jody and Justin and maybe Evan, and I've been close with them. I trained with them in Texas for 4 or 5 years, and I just met up with them at a tournament. This was after the pandemic and everything. To make a long story short, I was with them at a tournament and they were talking about it, and I just went off. I was shooting ideas out, and Jody's like, "Well, why don't you join us?" And so that's how I got adopted into the changeover.
Every good team needs an idea guy. Everybody needs an idea guy.
What makes us unique at the changeover is that we all have different kind of end goals for the changeover.
Mm-hmm.
Mine is actually most similar to yours. Mine is very I don't really care about me as much. I just want tennis as a whole to be better, because I look at other sports and I just think tennis is just not I think we have a product that people would like, but it's just not being shown or just produced. I can't explain it. I don't know if you know what I'm talking about.
Oh no, I know exactly what you're saying, and that totally makes sense. And I think the only way that we get tennis where it needs to be is by having good conversations. Guys like yourself and the guys at the Changeover Podcast. What people don't realize is there's guys playing the futures that if we structured tennis in a better way, there's 450 guys making a career in the NBA. And usually if you have a favorite team, the guys, even at the end of the bench, when you're watching basketball. But who's
Did you do the math on that?
I did. And the guys ranked 450. That's for if you're that's for the main roster. But then obviously there's guys, that's not counting guys on two ways. And that's not counting guys playing in the G League. That's not guys who are making more money than pro tennis players playing over in Australia or Europe and some of those other big leagues or whatever. But there's 450 main roster guys not on two ways in the NBA. But nobody knows the name of the guy, ranked 450 in the world unless he's been higher and it's dipped. And tennis has totally been the story of what have you done for me lately? And I just don't think it has to be that. We can fix a lot of things by changing formats, adding back draws, allowing opportunity for people to make a little bit more money and have a little bit more exposure. I think at the futures level, I think futures should be round robin. That's something I would love to see. I would love to see you bring in 16 guys once you get through qualies, and you say you're all playing Monday through Friday and everybody gets 5 matches. And then at the end of the week, they could kind of play finalists from there. If you're a finalist, and everyone else, they rank it, and based on how many matches you won, if you won 5 matches, you're coming away with 10 ATP points, 4, 3, 2, 1. It's more developmental friendly. You might have some juniors that would say, hey, I'll go play futures because I'm guaranteed 5 matches throughout the week. All of a sudden your cost is worthwhile. There's a lot of things they could experiment with that I think are worthwhile. But I think the most important thing is, having sustainable money for guys, because like you said, there's a product there at the futures level and they need to play around with it.
Yeah. I mean, I think UTR was trying to take a crack at what you were saying. But I don't know how far or if they've tried to go further with that. I think playing round robins would be a double-edged sword, because
I can see it.
I guess with more money, like with the perfect dream in mind, yeah, I think a round robin would be great. But for futures, like imagine, like right now I'm in San Diego, and if I lose early, or if I do bad in the round robin, I'm essentially, paying to be here all week, and I'm collecting like my,
That's
if it's
true.
equivalent to the UTR, I'm collecting my four hundred
Yeah,
dollars. In a place like San Diego, I'm losing money just staying out here for a week. Whereas in a futures, if you lose, you could get out of there, get back to where you're going
you
to
could
be. I know
dip.
that's not the positive way to think of it, but I'm just thinking of
Yeah,
it,
that's
from
true.
both
You could
ways.
dip. Maybe that it's at the challenger level you make a change, but then your challengers are getting so competitive now. I don't know. That would be tough. But you're right. I wasn't thinking of it that way, but that's true. I think what we really should do here, AJ, and something I thought was interesting from listening to the Changeover podcast is kind of your current situation, very similar to back when Alex Bogomolov Jr. Was trying to play on tour, and he was spending like half the year, coaching, and then half the year playing until he kind of worked his way up the rankings or finally got the right amount of wins. So I don't want to steal your thunder, but if you could kind of, give us a little bit of an update on what the current plan is.
It wasn't, well, at the beginning, it wasn't planned like this. I was actually down full time in Dallas with Taylor Dent. Still has his academy down
I
there.
love Taylor Dent, dude.
And
I
so
did
I
not
was,
know that. That's phenomenal. That's like when I was growing up, I played serve and volley all through college. Sorry. And Taylor
that's
Dent
fine.
is the man. A
He is the man.
2010 Western and Southern Open main court, loses 4-4 to Nadal. My heart, I was like, gosh, I was rooting for him so hard. Anyway, okay, go ahead. I
I
love
was just
Taylor Dent.
gonna, yeah, he's the best. I mean, there's still some things that like he's taught me on and off court that I just keep with me. But
Yeah.
he was our coach, and it was me, Justin, Jody, and Evan. So
Okay.
we were all there training with him. And then the pandemic hit. And actually before the pandemic hit, my fiance now, who's in Pittsburgh with me, she's from Spain. She played
Okay.
golf at Texas A&M. That's how we met. And so like I had my stuff packed. I was ready to go to Spain like full time. Literally, like I had my flight booked. I was going to play a futures in LA. This was 2019, and then take a flight from LA to Heathrow to Barcelona, and that was it. And
Yeah.
then the pandemic hit, and that got canceled. And so I'm just training at the Dents, and like a couple weeks go by, and like more cancellations, like the whole earth shut
Oh
down.
yeah.
And so my parents are like, well, like why don't you just like come back, spend some time with your family. And it's a good idea. Like when, as tennis players, when do we have time to just like be with our family?
Right. There's no off season.
No. And so I drove back home to Pittsburgh. Actually, I drove from Dallas to Orlando, picked up my sister because she lives in Orlando now. And then our whole family was together for like a half a year. And so I hooked up with my old coach. I know I'm getting there. I'm sorry. I'm just
Okay.
explaining from the
No, no,
beginning.
no. I love it. Keep going.
And so I'm with my old coach, and he's the best coach I've ever had. And he just texted me. Like, I didn't even tell him I was home, and I get a text from him. He's like, "Hey, let's hit tomorrow." It's like, okay, I don't even know how you know I'm home. And so I started training with him, and then he works at a country club, but he's unique. He's taught a good amount of good players. Like, do you know Bjorn Fertangelo?
Yes, I do. Yep.
Do you know Casey Watt? He played for Notre Dame, a little bit older.
Oh gosh, that's super funny. I feel like I do. When would he have graduated?
Oof.
That sounds
Like
so familiar.
13, 12, 2013, 2012. He's older. And
Yeah,
then do you know
he's
Chris
he's like
Mangle, who
if he
played for Duke?
graduated those years, he's literally like my age. So I feel bad. I feel like I do know that name. Okay, so what is the other
But
one?
anyways, I'm not to
What
name
was
drop,
that
but
last name? What was the last one? I didn't hear it.
Chris Mangle,
Yeah, I think I know that name too.
he
Okay,
played
keep
for
going.
Duke.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
anyways,
keep
he
going.
he's taught a lot of good players. He was able to have this country club job
Right.
and still be able to teach at a high level with juniors as well. And so I was one of his juniors, and he was teaching me. And then the country club season is from April to November. And so, the pandemic hit like February, March. So we were training for a month, and then, the club opens up. He's like, AJ, why don't you just like teach like an hour for me? And
Yeah.
that turned into like a full-time thing. And I was making enough money to, you know, I've never made money like that before. And I was thinking like, oh, like, I could make money like that and then go and play my tournaments. And
Right.
everything kind of started connecting, like without me even trying. Things just kind of started clicking. And lo and behold, I spent half the year from April to November. I'm in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania with him training, and I try to run out to tournaments like this, twice, maybe three times a month. and then
Yeah.
from November to April, full-time schedule.
Yeah. Which obviously is, I mean, is giving you a nice span and opportunity to go play. But also with there not really truly being an off season, there's always this feeling of like, if you're not playing, there's other guys that are moving up and you're kind of staying stagnant. And then when you come back, there's pressure, like, to maintain the points you've already gotten or to do well in the weeks that you did. It's a different kind of pressure.
I
Um,
think Zeke actually, he said it very well on when he was on our podcast. He was talking about his struggles earlier this year,
yeah.
and
Well
I ran into that.
documented for those that follow Zeke Clark. There was
Did he
some
talk
rough
about that when he
weeks.
was with you?
I can't remember. I text Zeke like crazy. I probably drive him nuts. I might be the number one Zeke Clark fan like in the nation, to be honest. I just
But
send him
so
random facts about himself and just like try to pump him up all the
he's the
time.
best. But
Anyway,
I think he said it best on our podcast where he was like, at one point I was like, what am I doing? And I'm focusing too much on the wrong things. And he
mhm,
started taking down to the basics of just like, am I putting out a good level of tennis, like a high level of
right.
tennis? And so I think that's a good way to look at things. If you go into tournaments like, I need to defend these points, or like, what I'm
Mhm,
trying to say, when you start putting those like pressures on yourself, your level is just gonna drop, or like, you're just not focused. Whereas in like,
right.
if you go into that tournament, if you have one tournament a month or two tournaments a month, if you go into like just focus on producing as high of a tennis level as you can play, you're
Yeah.
gonna probably get better results,
For
And
sure.
I,
It
I
definitely it's so and you can even at a micro level just be like, am I playing every single point with the right intent? And like every single game in a match is an opportunity to bring your best level. And if you're focused on all those outside things of the ranking points, there's no way, that your
not at all.
full focus is on hitting the ball, executing, hitting with the right intent. You're missing shots that you don't normally miss whenever you're putting that extra pressure on yourself. I mean, yeah, 100%. And I remember him talking about that on your pod for sure. So,
And I
yeah.
think to continue with like kind of what I do, I think the way tennis is, I'm not in a positive way. I'm able to teach and play futures. I think if I ever were able to increase my ranking in the
Mhm.
future, I could take a step back, talk to my coach and look at, what kind of schedule needs to be put out there. Like if I
Right.
maybe need to scale back on the teaching, and you know what I'm trying to say?
Yeah.
So it's like for now what I'm doing, it works, but it's a flexible thing where I could change if need be.
And I think that's all. I mean, I think it's attainable. I think it makes sense. I think you're still getting yourself out there enough that you're going to get the opportunities, to get some of those ranking points and still move your way up that ranking. And I think the cool thing with you and your buddies, now that you're part of this changeover podcast team, is that you guys are all, for better for worse, you're all going to have different results. You're all going to
Oh yeah.
break through at a different pace. It would be extremely rare for you to, maybe all move from futures to challies at the same time or to move beyond that at the same time. Um, so it's going to be an interesting like collage of documenting kind of everyone's story while it's like, also not really about you, but
I
but
I
we're
don't
going to
want it to
get
be
those
about me at
updates.
all.
Right, right, right. But I'm sure we're going to get those updates. But it's one
Yeah.
of those things where it's like, just like here at the Grassroots Tennis Podcast, my goal is simple. I want every single one of these episodes to be a conversation that doesn't expire. I want it to be information that if somebody could discover this podcast and you could, when I get to interview number 1000 and people go back and look at episode 1 and be like,
Yeah,
wow, I
it
went
still
back and
retains its
listened to
value.
that
Yeah.
and I learned something from that or I gained something valuable from that because there's a lot of people out there that love this game a lot. And so like you said, I think we have similar goals. What are some of the goals maybe of the other the changeover team? Like what do they see with the changeover podcast?
Like have what's his name? The French guy who blogs. He's actually really, really famous in France. He gets like
Oh,
40K plus. He was just at the Futures with us in Montreal. I'm forgetting his name. Man, I'm blanking. Um, I forget his name. Anyways, he does a more of a
He
blog
did, he didn't
style.
need the shout out anyway. It's fine. He gets like 40K.
He gets to train at like the Metroglue Academy. I
Okay.
butchered that name, but like
Mortaloo.
he does he does that. He has all of his sponsors and everything through his blog. So he's like
Oh, nice.
self-sustained. Exactly. Yeah, it's pretty cool. And so I think that I'm not gonna give names for the guys because some of the goals are funny, but like that was one of the goals of one of the guys. Another goal was like, look, if we could, there's a hole in tennis marketing and in tennis entertainment. If we could fill that hole, it could be a legitimate, profitable business.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
agree with that.
I think there
You
needs to
know,
be I think there needs to be a change in tennis media. When I started reaching out to people just to even do this, there's a lot of people willing to have a conversation. I think that there's a lack of this, and I think a lot of people don't want to do interviews because it's a pain in the butt to schedule all of them. But what I've noticed so far is there's a lot of people willing to sit down and have a conversation about the game because they care.
and I
And
think another thing that kind of ties back to what you're saying about people lower in the rankings getting paid. It's like you can't really follow. Like you don't go to a tournament for a guy who's 400 because you don't know a lot about him. But
right.
if you see him enough on YouTube or on Spotify or even on a tennis channel or ESPN, you know what I'm trying to say? If you see him
Right.
enough and get to know about him, like you connect more with him, like you root for him.
Yeah.
It's like that the whole F1 thing on Netflix. People were like still raging about. Like
Yeah.
to be honest, I think it's the stupidest sport ever. I know I'm gonna get killed for that one, but it's like it's driving. But the
But then
series
once people get
itself,
obsessed with it, they love
the
it. The
series
production
makes you,
value.
yeah, the
Yes.
series makes you want to watch it. And not to throw Netflix under the bus, but I think they butchered the tennis one. A lot of people
I
agree. Did you
there was a couple things you could take away from it, but they focused on the wrong part. So
exactly? So that's what
here's
I'm saying. I
the
think
focus was so much on the results of the matches.
they
That's
didn't
old
even show the
news.
matches. They didn't
That's
even
old
show any
news.
points.
Right. And that's old news. Yeah, they didn't show the points. And then they
It was like,
focused
what are
on
we
the
doing?
results and how they're navigating through the tournament. Nobody cares. We already saw that on the news a year ago. It
Yeah,
was
and
like,
not only
and
that, you want to know what they're doing off the court. Like you want to get to know them.
yes,
Like
I
they just
agree.
showed like Berrettini having a dinner with his family. They didn't show him. I'm sure he goes out with his friends, on a Saturday
Yeah.
night. Like I'm sure, like he does fun stuff that people want to see,
Oh
and it's
yeah.
like they didn't show anything. So
No,
I mean, I think they butchered it.
I want to see the relationships guys actually have with their coaches. I want to
Yeah,
see
and
what
and the
they do for
relationships like
fun.
in the locker room relationships.
Oh, 100%. And I think that in the future, any person that they get, they need to have them sign off on they need to have them sign off on like, there is no like you can't if after a loss you can't follow me to the locker room or you can't like you've got to be completely open to just full disclosure, all of it.
Or
And if
just
not, pick somebody else.
yeah, exactly. I was gonna say, or just if you're gonna pay them that much money for a show, like yeah, you got to be like willing to go all out with it.
I think that they really should they need to find someone that's like full time on like the Challenger Tour or the Futures Tour. Like for a while, Tennis Channel was following JJ Wolf around and kind of doing a vlog. And I thought that that was interesting. And I think that that as he was moving into top 100 was more interesting than like the boring episode, a couple of the boring episodes on the Netflix special that we got actually. But
Yeah, but like I guess like we went off on a tangent there. I'm sorry.
that my
I
whole life
love
is
it.
tangents.
Yeah.
Don't worry
But
about it.
anyways, I think that part of us doing this is tennis has such a hole that needs to be filled.
Oh yeah, I definitely think so. And I think some of those goals that you guys have separately from the pod, I think that actually, because you have so many people focused on different things, some people are like, oh, we got to be all united on the same thing. You guys don't all have the same talents. Just like you're not the same tennis player, you have different brains, different brainstorming, and you have different things you bring to the table. So, like, as you guys work together, it's kind of nice that you can divide and conquer. I think you'll all benefit from the fact that you have a slightly different focus. Um, and I
To
think it's
me,
going to help
what's
it go a little farther.
oh yeah, and to me, what's cool is I'm actually learning from other guys on tour. It's almost like a little bit of an advantage in a corny way. It's like some of the stuff that Keegan said, some of the stuff that Zeke said, and some of the stuff I don't know if you saw a new episode with Tristan. It was just me and Tristan.
I've watched every episode. Keep going. Yeah.
And so anyways, like there's like little gems that they've learned and they've adapted or like adopted that it makes me look at tennis from a different angle, you know?
Oh yeah. No, I love that. Perspective is
And it's like
everything.
if I'm not doing this, if I was just being my own antisocial self at tournaments, you know, like I wouldn't have ever have thought of tennis from like this angle, you know? And I think it's really cool because I kind of use what they say, you know?
As a guy who grew up in a small town and I didn't start taking tennis seriously until I was like 15 years old. Honest to goodness, fell in love with it way too late. Found my way, scraped my way into playing some low level college tennis. And honestly, myself now would kick my college self's butt. And I've learned a lot just from having conversations with people over the years. And I tend to think that well, an underrated thing is people learn from other people. You can
It's
observe and you can do
wisdom.
things, but it's wisdom. It's the passing of wisdom. It's the conversations you have. It's the drills you pick up. It's the tips you pick up. It's this person does this for recovery. Keegan talking about his meditation.
Yep.
People.
For me, the Tristan episode was the way he put it, where every tennis player like runs their own race, you know?
Yeah,
So like you shouldn't be coming to these tournaments, you know, comparing yourself to others or even comparing your own results. Like I should be here, you know. It's like do what you need to do, and let kind of your own race run out, you know.
yeah.
And it,
No,
it takes a little bit of pressure off yourself.
it's so hard too because everyone, the narrative is always people's age, and then you compare yourself to other people the same age, and tennis is so unique in the fact that it's
So
it's
competitive, yeah,
so
or comparative.
competitive. It's competitive, it's
That's a word.
comparative, but it's an art. And there's so many different ways to play, and there's differences. And you have these guys that'll be 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, whatever. Then all of a sudden they'll have a crazy 6 months, and it's like boom, they're up there. And then I can't, the stat may not be accurate now, but I remember a few years ago there was like the average person grinding on the tour takes them like 6 years to get to the top 100 and maintain that ranking. And it's like a lot of people financially can't afford to grind for 6 years, to break through. And if you can, you're
You
a
know, one of
lucky
our
one.
biggest one of our biggest questions that we get from people for the Changeover podcast is always like, ask your guests like I just got a text from somebody. I sent them I always send like close friends and family the link, and it was one of my old coaches, but he's like the 13th, 14th person to ask this. He goes, request, ask every guest how they pay for their tennis. And like he's not the first one, you know?
Hmm.
So everybody always wants to know like how can you afford to do this, you know?
Right. And now I guarantee that not every answer is the same either.
Oh, not even close.
Yeah, no, yeah, it's it's interesting. And obviously we learned a little bit from your podcast just because of some of the guys who are on there, but being from a different country changes the game a lot. Some of those smaller countries, they really support their guys.
Well, not only
um
that, it's like personalities. Like I said, like I'm you wouldn't believe it from me doing these podcasts, but I'm like a pretty antisocial guy. Like I'm pretty to myself. Like I barely passed my public speaking class at A&M. Like I don't like, you know, like I barely passed. I did the extra credit stuff to get my grade just so I didn't have to do it again.
You'll have to send
But
this interview to your teacher, send it back to the professor.
but anyways, like Jody, and this is like actually like a cool skill he has. Like he's able to I want to say ask. He's able to go out to people and get support, you know? He's able to
Hmm.
go tell people his goal, and he's able to get support, whereas in like someone like me, I don't have the guts or the, you know, like
Yeah,
I don't feel comfortable doing that, whereas he's
yeah,
so good at that, you know? Like I'm over here paying for my Airbnb and my rental car, and he was able to get housing here just from, you know, his
right.
connections, from being that personable guy. You know, everybody loves Jody. You know what I'm
One
trying
of
to say? So like
I
that's one
get
of the
what
things
you're
he brings
saying.
to the
I'm
table.
a person, I come from a family where I genuinely could talk to a brick wall for an hour. Like I'm not afraid to talk to people. Over time I have developed some social anxiety. However, what I've learned, one of the most important life lessons I've ever learned, is the worst thing that anybody can ever tell you is no. And when you start
Yeah, that's
asking
true.
people things, you'll be amazed how often that you get the answer of yes, and all the doors and opportunities that it opens for you when you
Oh
just
yeah.
start asking questions. But that's really hard when you start as an introvert. But wow, if you start doing that and you start asking questions and getting these opportunities, I think for you it would almost be shocking to get that yes and to have people start telling you yes because you're like, really? Okay, it's tough. Personality, that's a part of the game too.
Oh yeah.
It's tough. That's tough. Oh man, I've got a whole list of questions. I haven't even asked you a single one of them, but that's
Shoot.
awesome. I love it. No, this is so much
No,
better than all my
yeah,
questions.
it should be organic,
It really should. I love everything that you guys are doing, over at
For the changeover,
Grassroots. Or
it's the same thing. We have a like on our phone, we'll have X amount of things we want to do, and it goes like this. But it's better like this instead of like you just asking a question, then I answer it blandly, then you ask a
yes,
question, then I answer it blandly. It's
yeah.
better to have like a full context, question
On,
or full
I
context
do
conversation.
I do have an important question for you because I think it's one that always gets a great answer. I need to know who was the first person to really kick your butt. Like that's one of my favorite questions because it's usually traumatic. Do you have like a match in the juniors where you were just devastated? Or maybe at the first time at a pro event where you just were super disappointed in a result?
The one, it's weird. The one that stuck with me where I was just like, wow, I got my butt kicked. So I have, to put things in perspective, I have more of an aggressive baseliner style.
Okay.
And I normally win or lose matches on my own racket. Like not in like a cocky way, it's just the way things go down.
Oh yeah, it's the flow of the match. I totally get it. Yeah.
And like I'm not one to sit back and like outlast you. And I played my game style against Emilio Nava at
Okay.
Champaign University. It was 2019, the Champaign Futures. He
Okay.
just lost in the finals of the US Open Juniors. And I was like, okay, I'm playing a junior. It's all right, It's a
Yeah.
different ball game. From juniors to pros, it's a whole different ball game. And going to the match like confident. And he beat me like 3-4 or 3-3, but it was, man, I got off the court. I called my coach. I just started venting to my coach, and I called my dad. I vent to my dad. I was like, look, I just played good tennis and I just was shut out. Like didn't feel like I had a sliver of hope, you know?
Right.
Like he was
Yeah.
just blistering balls by me. Like I was hanging in there. Like I felt
Yeah.
like he was playing pro tennis and I
Yeah.
was like playing futures tennis. Like
Oh
that
yeah.
match really stuck out with me. And yeah, I haven't had a lot of those since then.
I think what's tough for people who when they try to play that aggressive baseliner style, something I obviously being a late bloomer, in my own kind of playing, a lot of times there are days where I'm matched up, many days where I was matched up with people who are, on paper they should beat me. They're much better than me. And on those days when you step on the court and you realize my best right now is here and they're here, it's a higher level. It's not even about can I play better and can I raise my level. It's what can I do to bring their level down. And I think that that can be hard to do sometimes when you're playing that aggressive baseliner style. You're not going to sit back here and make them play a longer point or throw in a bunch of low slices to maybe take the ball out of their strike zone. You're not trying to play short corners off the side of the court or whatever. You're just like, I'm blasting, and when it's not working, it's tough.
It's so tough. But one word that you use matchup, which actually resonates with me, is at futures, matchups are massive. So when you watch pro tennis, like when you watch the ATP level tennis, they are the best of their game styles. So their
Right.
game styles don't really matter as much. You know what I'm trying to say? Like
Yeah, I got you. Yeah.
they're all like they're the best serve and volleyers, the best counter punchers, the best, the best of the game styles. At the futures
Yeah.
level, it's a mixed bag. So you can get like a really good counter puncher playing a mediocre serve and volleyer, but they don't know how to like they don't know how to handle the serve and volleyer. So it's like on
Because they
paper,
don't ever see it. And on paper, that
yeah,
person should dominate.
should absolutely kill him. But then you look like first round of futures, he lost like 3-2 or something like that. And so at the futures level, matchups are like so massive where you'll see guys where you're just like, well, how did this guy lose first round of a futures, or how this like he just won 2 futures in a row and then he lost to some guy you never heard of before. A lot of the times I think it's because of matchups.
Yeah, no, I'm glad that you went there with that. I think I think that's something that nobody talks about. And also, week in, week out, on the futures level, you might be playing hard courts one week and then next week be playing on clay. You don't know what the quality of the courts are going to be. You don't know if it's going to be a fast, hard, or a slower court. You might be playing an outdoor clay and then be playing, indoor fast a week later. It's not really conducive to training. And so court conditions matter, weather matters, and I don't want to say the hospitality, but just the way the tournament is set up, match times,
Being
they
comfortable with a
all
tournament.
play a factor.
Oh yeah, being comfortable with a tournament is huge because then you're focused on your tennis. Like I've been to tournaments where you're not in maybe a good country, not in a good neighborhood. You don't kind of have your plans set out. So like during your match day, you're focused on things other than your match, and that affects you 100%.
Yeah, it's what's probably the toughest area, I guess, place to play that you've been in. What has been the toughest scenario or situation you've been in?
You've probably heard it a bazillion times on the changeover. Cancun for me was like my no-go zone. I will never go back there ever again.
Yeah. I,
Just so like my thing is if I could play tennis, I'll grind through everything else. Like you could be playing in a
yeah,
war zone, but as long as like once you step on the court, we're playing tennis here. Like I'll do it. But in Cancun, you're battling, you're in the jungle, and it's not tennis. Like you get on the court and you're surviving. Like you're trying to outsmart your opponent. It's like a mental battle, which is also part of tennis. Like I am whining and making an excuse, but at the same
yeah.
time, I don't think it's worth it, you
Oh
know?
yeah, no, that's probably why Zeke's been so successful in Cancun. Because the dude just like he like vomits sunshine and rainbows. Like the dude just like has positivity coming out of him constantly. He's totally not shaken by the things that are bothering everyone else at the tournament. He's just like, all right, next point, let's play. It's yeah, I think it takes a lot to kind of overcome all those additional outside circumstances that might be playing in a role or distracting you from playing your best. So now you're in this situation where you're how old?
I'm 27.
So you're 27 and you're out here and you're trying to make this happen at 27. Athletically, you still got plenty of years to where you can be prime physical fitness. You still have the ability to get faster, to get stronger, to improve as a player at 27. Really shouldn't, unless injuries do happen or whatever, until maybe your mid 30s, really see that fall off if you can kind of take care of your body. So I guess my question is, at 27, if you could kind of go back in time and give advice to yourself at 13, or and then again maybe at 18, is there, what kind of advice would you be giving yourself if you could go back in time, or would you change the way you were training when you were younger at 13 or 18 that might have maybe even changed your situation now, or you'd feel like you'd be farther along?
Man, I could write a book about that. um, to my younger self, I would say, well, first off, I talked about this with Tristan in my last podcast. Um, at seventh grade, I was missing so much school, so I was still living like the normal human being lifestyle. I was missing so much school that I went homeschooled, and
Yeah.
so miserable. I was doing the online thing, and then I'd go with my coach. Not really. I'm from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. There's not like a whole lot of people there to train with, so it's like
Right.
me and my coach every day for a couple hours, and
Yeah.
I got burnt out. So it's like one of those things where it's like I would tell my younger self, you got to be on the court more. I would also tell my younger self, you got to find a way to make those hours on the court more entertaining or more fun, you know? And
Yeah.
there's such a fine line, and so I went to College Park my freshman year of high school, and things turned around. But if I were to tell my younger self again, I would have probably went there a little bit earlier.
Yeah.
Like I feel like I burned a year and a half of my junior career just in limbo in Pittsburgh.
Right.
So I would tell myself if I had to go back, got to spend more time on the court. That was one thing I always agreed with Taylor. It was like a big debate we had at the club where it's like, would you rather spend 4 hours every day on court of mediocrity or just 2 hours of really good practice? And I went into Taylor Dent's thinking 2 hours of really good practice. I think if you're locked in, that's good. And he goes, no, you need the reps, you need the hours.
Hmm.
And as my time with Taylor, continued, I really kind of bought in and agreed with that theory where you need time on court. And actually, I think I started seeing a little bit more results when I went home and I was teaching because I was forced to spend extra hours on court.
on the court.
I'd
Yeah.
do my 2 to 3 hours of training a day, and then I'd be hitting with a decent junior. And it's just the rallying up the middle, across court, the sets. Even though it's not anywhere near the level I'm at, it's just the reps. And so,
Right.
it's like 6+ hours on court every day, and then you go and play a tournament. You're like, your timing is good. Like, what I'm trying to say? Like the little things. It's just, I
Oh
think
no, I
you
get
need to
it.
be on
I
court, but you also don't want to burn out.
When you're playing people, sometimes there's that mode too. People talk about that flow state, but I think there's that coach state where you all of a sudden are like you're in a. It's when you go from like player to at least being a part-time coach. You're like, I don't miss cross court balls. You're like, this is what I do all day long is I cross court rally until the other person misses. I don't miss cross court shots. It's like with how dads get dad strength. You get that coach strength whenever
I
you
think
become a coach.
another thing is when you're coaching, you're passing off what you believe.
Hmm.
And if you're saying it as a coach, like, you have to believe it. I'm not going to tell you something that I don't think works,
Right,
or
right.
I don't believe in. So if anything, it really added confidence to things in my game, maybe, that I wasn't confident in, because I was doing them from a player standpoint, like, you know nothing specific, but just like maybe like something on my forehand or something on my backhand that, as a player, I was always kind of, every day it would be something wasn't working, or I wasn't really believing, like, does this really work? But then telling other juniors, like, this is the way it should be done, this is how you should do it. Then when I go and I execute it better, like, more confidently, without really thinking about it, because all the times I'm teaching it, I'm like, this works. Like, if I'm telling them and I believe in it, you know. Whereas
Yeah.
as a player, sometimes you doubt it a little bit more. I don't know if that made sense.
No, it does. I do. Like I kept playing men's opens for a while, and I stopped competing when the pandemic hit, and just because I missed the grind or whatever it would be, and there's times where it's like I'm in a match, and I'm like, no, you cannot be flat-footed right now. Like it's like you gotta keep moving even if you're tired because you're preaching all about the footwork all the time. Or maybe it's like you get into rallies and it's like, hey, I missed that shot, but I would have told my players to take that same shot. It's all about the intent and are you picking the right shots. I believe in playing high percentage and hitting big, but to the right targets. And if you're doing those things, um, I'm a believer that eventually it pays off. And if you just don't have the level and you're not good enough that day, that's fine, but lose playing the right way. And so, yeah, I could totally see how that would be something that you would feel like it embeds in you even a little bit deeper once you're sharing
Exactly.
that knowledge. It's like, I can't go back on that. I've told 20 kids this is how you have to play tennis.
Oh yeah. But it's not that it was wrong, and you're making it right. Like, it could have been right, or it is right, and now you kind of solidified it, if that makes sense. Like, it
Right.
was something that you were doubting as a player, but now you believe and see it from a different angle as a coach, and you're like, that is it. Like, I'm gonna stick to that.
So obviously you said you've seen some changes in your own opinion of practice sessions. What do you personally feel like a great practice session looks like?
I mean, that's a wild question. It depends on, there's so many factors. Like, am I,
That's true. Are you at a tournament? You got to
just
break it
so many
down for
things,
us
and
then. I don't know.
it depends on a player. Like, for me, I feel like if my fitness is good,
Hmm.
it's always about getting into the point. Like, I feel my most comfortable when I'm in a point.
Right.
So I really focus on, even though it's tedious and boring, serve and return. Like, whenever I'm doing tons of serve and return drills, like, I tend to be playing a little bit better, because I'm able to get myself past the serve and the return and get into where I want to be.
That was the right answer. Preach that. Say it louder for the people in the
Like
back.
like Taylor, who, like, again, like, what one thing I loved about Taylor is, like, we'd have 4-hour training sessions. We'd go 12 to 4 in the Dallas heat. That was
Yeah.
our training.
I have so
And
much
there was
jealousy. You have no idea. Okay, keep going.
and there was periods where this is one thing I love about Taylor's coaching, where it's like he would teach you how to be top 10, and if you could execute what he's teaching you,
Mhm.
you know, you would prosper from it. Like he
Yeah.
wouldn't sugarcoat it. He'd just be like, this is what you need, this is how you got to do it.
Yeah.
And that's how he'd teach. He wouldn't be like, well, like for right now we need this and then we'll maybe do that. Like, no, like this is what we got to do. And his thing is serve first ball. Like you got to be pulling your opponent off the court. Like if you look at the top levels, like a deep ball doesn't really hurt anybody. Like it maybe minimizes, you know, your
Mhm.
defense, but if I'm just slapping balls down the middle, it doesn't do anything to those guys. Those guys all know how to handle that, you know?
Right.
So he's always about pulling guys off the court. So for 4 hours, we'd set up a cone. Like I'd do a wide serve on the deuce. Would set up a cone, like a stupid wide serve, like halfway up the box, because he wants you to get as good as you can with that. And then my first ball would be wide the other way. So it'd be like wide, wide.
Yeah.
And I'd play games of like 40 against like Jody and Justin and Evan. And then
You
they'd
play
serve a
play
game of
games to what?
4-0, 40. I'm telling you, he was
Okay.
all about reps. And so like
Wow.
these games would take like half hours. And we would do like we would do
You're counting
wide.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5. For the record
Yes,
here.
we're
You're
counting. We're
playing you're
counting.
playing to 40. So the junior players listening to this, when you go to the park with your friend and you practice outside of practice, high intensity, put the time in, and get out of here with that. Hey, let's play dropping hit points to 7. Like you got to play to 40. Like that's what needs to happen.
40 might be a little extreme, but
But you got better.
I was gonna say like that really helps. And when you're one thing I learned that I kind of really liked was I took what Taylor taught me, which was like, you know, the top 10 way of playing. But
Mhm.
then I really, when I went home with my old coach, I did add a tad element of let's win now. Because a lot of times when I was with Taylor, things were clicking. But
Mhm.
when it was like 5-all in the first set or something, sometimes you got to win that game however you can. I know it sounds horrible, but like, look, like you did what you needed to do, and now this game might get dirty, it might get ugly. Just win it, get by it, and then go back to what you were doing. And I wasn't doing that. You know, I'd hit 4 reckless errors. I'd be serving at 5-all, and I'd do what we've been working on,
Because
but
you were
without really
committed
any,
to the development rather than
but
the
without any
win.
thought, you know. So
Right.
I'd do it. And it's like, shoot, you
Mindlessly.
know, yeah, love 15, and it's like, yeah, like most people at 5-all, even at the higher levels, like there's nerves, there's the mental aspect. Like there are games at the pro level that aren't as high quality as other games. You know, it's not like those guys are playing, you know, way up here the whole time. Even pro matches go like this, you
Oh
know.
yeah, ebbs and
And
flows.
so I really learned that when I went back home, and I started combining, you know, what Taylor taught me with, you know, when it's time to get dirty, it's time to get dirty, you know.
Yeah, no, I love that. And I think there needs to be a balance of that. I think junior players need to hear that. Parents of junior players need to hear that.
There's
And then
also the opposite way. Again, I'm going back to my podcast when we had Oscar on. He talked about how, you know, there were some matches where it was only win now, and you know you're bunting the ball around and you're pushing
yeah,
things in, and that's not good either, because you're only gonna
it's
get
a
so far. You're only
balance.
gonna get yeah, exactly. There's a good balance. That's what you're looking for.
I think the balance comes with those ebbs and flows, and it has to be about intent and opportunity. So what I mean by that is you have to have good intent. You need to be entering your matches, focused on the things that you know that it takes for you to eventually get where you want to go. But when you have that opportunity for that big break point, or when you have that opportunity, to close out a set or what it might be, it doesn't matter if it's the ugliest game in the world. You got to find a way to get that point. And so, when that opportunity presents itself to shut that door on somebody, I, as a coach, do not care what it looks like. Figure it out. Do what it
But like
takes.
I also
Figure it out.
see from Taylor's standpoint, the better the level of the tennis player, the more likely you're gonna need what he taught you to win that game. You know,
Correct. Yeah. No, I get it.
like I see where the vision was, but we're also not there yet. You
Yeah.
know,
Well,
so
if you
so
think
it
about it,
was.
the average person that's probably going to listen to this interview is not there yet either. So very few people ever get to that point, that top 10 player that, Taylor's trying to show you how the top 10 player plays. It's like getting there is amazing. And I think this is a tangent. but we're talking about being that top 10 player. I think that, this next generation is going to be different. I think we once Djokovic retires, there's going to come a time where we're going to see somebody that's like a 15 seed in a men's open win a slam. I think tennis is deeper than it's ever been. I think that the rankings don't matter as much as they used to.
I think
Obviously, the
tennis is at a
draws matter.
crossroads though. Like
Why is that?
I look at it two ways. So I look at it, yes, tennis is as deep as it's ever been. So like the generations that are here,
Yeah,
like they're good. Like even again using Taylor, he'd come to Futures with us. So like when he first started teaching us, we were like his first kind of experiment.
yeah,
And he'd always say like, oh, like I can go back to like when I was playing Futures or Satellites at the time. Like I went right through him, and he'd be like, look, I could probably still go out, like train for a month and go out there and win a Futures. Not saying he couldn't, but he'd come with us, and then he'd be like, damn, like it was not like this when I used to play. Like he
oh
even
yeah,
he even realized, like he said a couple times, like that's a lot different than what I thought it was out there. And this was even when we were in qualies of Futures at that point. So it wasn't even like what we are now, where we're just getting directly into main draw. Like we were playing qualies, people who were barely ranked, and he was like, wow, it's like a pretty solid level.
it's
And
so
so,
much deeper than it was. They're seeing
but
this in all professional sports, though.
but
Keep
the
going.
crossroads would be is the reason I think it's necessary for somebody like us to do this is I think younger generations don't care about tennis. Like I just think tennis as a sport is actually, from a popularity standpoint, is like exponentially shrinking. Like how are we the second or third most popular sport in the world? But like I just feel like people are, if they had the choice to pick up a tennis racket or a soccer ball or baseball or basketball, the tennis racket would be last on that list. And like the biggest thing is I'm at this country club where it's these families are able to afford to have their kids play like
Hmm.
full time at a high level. And there are some talented athletic kids at the club that I'm at, and they choose lacrosse, they choose basketball, and they choose every other sport under the sun except tennis. And I think it's because they don't think it's cool, and they don't think it's like, they don't have somebody, like they obviously think they have ambassadors for other sports that make them want to get into that sport,
Hmm.
or they see things on TV and like kind of what we're doing here. They see things and they want to do that. Tennis doesn't have any of that. They look at tennis and like, like, why don't I want to play tennis?
Right.
And
And
they have fun. They have fun when they're out on the court. Like they're the less serious guy. Like the people I'm talking about, they're less serious. And when I have them for a clinic, we just do like games. It's just a fun clinic. They have the time of their life, but then they never really even think about taking it seriously because, like I said, it's so far down on the list of sports to choose. Just
yeah, I
and
think
I
that
think
I think that there used to be more kids to pick from, though. I think there it has now become, as a generation, it has become acceptable to do nothing at all. Back in the day, you had your parents were like, you got to be in extracurriculars. There were multi-sport athletes, and there were people they'd be dedicated to tennis. There's a whole, I don't know what the percent is, but there might be 10% less, youth even playing sports because it's become okay for them to just, play video games all day long. We've lost them to that, or what it might be. So, and then like you said, some of the other sports are more fun. And I think if we change the narrative,
well, it's not even more fun. It's just their perception of tennis
well,
is like not
socially,
cool. The way I'd use it, yeah,
it's
it's not
because their
cool.
friends think it's fun. It's what their friends are doing. Yeah, exactly.
Exactly.
It's not to make it the cool thing.
Like
You got to make
my
it something for more people.
my coach is a little bit older. I won't give away his age, but back when he was playing, like he just tells us about how like they'd have to. He grew up in Florida. He'd have to
Yeah.
wait in line for courts, and when his court was up, he'd be like hitting on the wall, like just trying to get better. Than like
Hmm.
I wouldn't. There are stories he told me where I'd be like, there's no way a tennis club was that packed or was that popular. Because
It
me
used
growing
to be
up,
like that.
yeah, exactly. And it's like it it's a shell of what it once was. I mean, according to older people who have played in the 70s, 80s, and maybe even the 90s.
Right.
I'm not sure,
The
but
tennis
definitely like the
boom.
70s. And
I
yeah,
think that
and
I think we could get a second tennis boom. This is my hot take. I've told people for a while. Junior tournaments need to find a way for junior tournaments to have prize money, and then I think you'd have more kids playing.
well, no,
That I
I
think
think
that would be
part of
fun.
the problem also is like the part of the problem is that people are getting so good so young, and it's so competitive so young. It's like if you don't start tennis seriously at like I'd say 7 or 8, like you're already I said this with Tristan, you're already done, you know? You can't
Yeah.
pick up a racket at high school level. You can't pick up a racket at like 13, 14 and expect to be good. Like your family and you have to, for tennis, have to make a commitment young.
Young. Yeah. And, not everybody's
When I
going to
was
be.
like, when I was 11 or 12, my sports were tennis and baseball. I was damn good at baseball. And I chose tennis over baseball when I was 11. You know, I just went one sport. Like I made the massive commitment.
Yeah.
But like, I mean, I was playing competitive tennis since I was really little. But like that was when I went solo. But I was still training every day from like when I was 6 or 7 up until then. You know?
Two things on that is one, not everybody can be Taylor Fritz, who really doesn't, fall in love with it till they're like 12. Essentially, is a late bloomer, but then is a giant and also has a father that, he was playing for the time he was young because his dad's a coach. And then the second thing that I was saying that is I've seen that personally, with some of the youth that I've coached. I'll have a summer camp where maybe, there were 10, 12 people within the same age group that are playing, and within a year maybe one or two of them stick around because in that graduating class, I had one player in particular that had been playing 3, 4, 5 years longer because they started when they were young, and they're like, well, I'm not as good as so and so, why should I play? And it's so discouraging for anyone, even a 10-year-old to pick it up and to be around, or maybe not even play in the same group, but to see someone that's their peer that's so good, and they think, oh, I stink at this, and it's they're not okay with putting in the time to try to be a decent player, that it's already too late. So yeah, I think there's a lot of different things we could deep dive on from the can of worms that you just opened. We could
One
probably
thing
do a
you
research study on a
Yeah,
lot of
there's a
those
lot of times
things.
there's a lot of times on these podcasts where it's like one little subject could be a whole podcast on its own. But
Yeah.
one thing you said about Taylor Fritz where he doesn't love it, I kind of agree with him. Where I remember he had an interview. This is probably pre-pandemic, where he talked about how every day, like, what's it take to be good? He said like, well, every day I go on the court till I want to quit tennis, and I go past that, then I fall asleep, wake up, and do it again. And it's but like that sounds like that sucks, but it's kind of true. He would be on the court till he doesn't want to be there anymore,
Yeah.
exceed that, and then do it every day. You know, like it's not good enough to just play till you're not having fun anymore. Like it's life. When you want to be good at something in life, it kind of loses its fun and novelty. In anything, like it stops becoming fun when you want to be good. Just how it
Sometimes,
is.
yeah, sometimes like when your passion becomes your job, all of a sudden it's not so
You can
fun.
still be
It's not your
passionate about it, but it loses its. I don't.
the
Fun's not even
love
a great word.
changes. I know what you're saying.
Yeah.
It's a different feeling. Yeah, I know. I totally get that.
So
Um,
even video games, it's like if there's a certain video game you like for me, I like League of Legends. I'm a League of Legends nerd, and it's like I could play and have fun, but like during the pandemic when I could do nothing but video games and I was trying to get good at it, I stopped playing it. I was like, wow, like I tried to get good at it and it lost its fun because I was trying to improve and I was trying to get better, and just that's how things work.
yeah, no, I mean, I get it. All right, I think we should pivot here. And I have we've went on so many tangents. I don't know where our tangents started. Oh, I have one more thing. So going back like 10 minutes into our tangent, I don't know. But we've got to find a way to market this better and for people to understand. We always say top 10, top 10, like it's this thing. I'm like, they need to stop talking about top 10 and making a big deal out of the people in the top 32. It's like, wow, you're seated at a slam. And all of a sudden it shouldn't be just about top 100. It needs to be like, oh yeah, they're in the top 200. Like if you're there's 30 teams in the NBA. Every one of them has 5 players on the court to start the game, right? Okay,
Yeah.
that's 150 players right there. And like, we don't talk about the 150th best tennis player in the world like they're a starter on an NBA team. That dude has so much pull. Doesn't matter who it is. Their pictures on the billboard. They're on the big screen, whenever you go into that town, whatever it should be. And most of these teams play 8 or 9 deep. So all of a sudden you're looking at that. Guys in the top 300 during the regular season in the NBA are in the rotation and playing games night in, night out. But we don't talk about the 300th ranked tennis player in the world, and we should. And the USTA has the ability to change the narrative. There are some guys right now that are ranked in the top 300 that are so good that get no shine. And I don't know if that's, Tennis Channel, going out and doing a better documentary than Netflix did and following, someone ranked 300 or 450 or, whatever it might be. But we have to change the conversation and stop just saying, "Oh yeah, they're a top 10." It's like, yeah, but is the dude at 10 exponentially right at 10 exponentially better than the guy at 20? No. On a given day, those guys are both incredible. They're
Yeah.
incredible. Like you said, they are beyond the 99th percentile. They are the best in the world
I mean, if you look at
at their style.
any other profession, if you're the thousandth best in any other profession in the world, you're like a superstar, you
Oh
know?
yeah. Do you know how many businesses would kill to have like
The
a
thousandth
top
best,
1,000
whatever,
best salesman? You're
top
making
thousand doctor in the world. Yeah, you're
oh
you're you're making
you're
millions.
good. You're good. There's billions of people in the world. It's like, can
But I
we?
think I think that all stems from you're talking about Tennis Channel. I don't want to sound like a whiny journeyman. That's what I always because I'm
Yeah,
somewhat pessimistic, and I always tell journeyman I'm gonna try my best when I go on podcasts not to sound like a negative person. But like the way I look at it is a lot of these tournaments and Tennis Channel and all these big organizations,
mhm,
they just kind of take the money and run. Like they don't
yep,
they don't really care what happens. You know, like these big tournaments, these 1000s, even 500s, 250s, and the ITF and the ATP. I mean, again, I don't know enough and have done enough research to really go shooting from the hip here, but I could take a guesstimate and say that, of all the money they make, they're happy with what's going on now. They just pocket all that money and then just hope it happens next year. Like
right.
they don't invest into tennis. They kind of just take from tennis, if that makes sense.
I know exactly what you're saying, and that is one of my biggest frustrations. I
It's
think,
like the guys and they use the tennis players because it's like the guys at the top, they deserve that money. Like why should
right,
they give up their money they're making? And they also the guys at the top don't really care if it changes because they're making their millions.
right.
So, and they have the most pool. So it's like these organizations are like, well, how do you feel? It's like, how do you feel, Federer? It's like, well, he's like, I feel amazing. I'm living at the top of the world here, and so things aren't really going to change. And these tournaments love it because things stay how they are and they keep on making their money. And meanwhile, the guy
Yeah,
who's like 101 in the world is kind of getting screwed because of that.
yeah. If
It's like when
they
when the U.S. Open makes $800 million and only was it like 60 million or 50 million go to prize money, all prize money for men, women, like
don't, oh man,
wheelchair. And so it's
it
like where does the rest of
insanity.
that 750 million go?
It's
Because
insanity.
it
It
goes to that one
is.
person who shows up to the USTA center twice a week and gets like a six-figure job. It's all
Yeah.
politics.
Oh, it is. That's where we're messing up. Because if they could change it, I personally believe with as deep as tennis is now, like I would love to see like the Grand Slams. You want to make them an even bigger deal. And what do we want in any sport? Like, yeah, they love when people dominate, but we want more parity. All of a sudden, they took these Masters 1000s and they extended the draws this year. What were they seeing? They were seeing qualifiers, lucky losers, and lower ranked guys make deeper runs in these draws than they ever have at these Masters 1000s. Why? Because they're getting a chance to play. They weren't getting a chance to play before. So now all of a sudden, that's why that's
That's a touchy
happening.
subject though, because playing devil's advocate, how is the tournament going to profit or the ATP going to profit off of a first round between a qualifier and the guy who's 90 in the world? You know,
Right. I get
I'm just
that.
playing. I'm just playing devil's advocate.
I
You
see
know,
why it's not an
it's like
advantage
the
to them
NBA
there.
finals this year. I'm not a big NBA guy, but it's like I have no like I don't watch NBA in general, but I have no motivation to watch the Heat versus the Nuggets. As a casual person, if I saw like
I
the
do
Lakers
because
in
I
there,
threw $1 down on the Heat when their odds were
but
horrible, and I make like
but my
250 bucks if they win.
my point being is unless you're like a hardcore fan,
Right.
that match just doesn't appeal to anybody.
Oh, it's the first time in years that people are not saying the NBA is rigged because everybody's like, they were so close to having a Lakers Celtics finals. And so the fact that it's not is the first time in a long time that people are like, oh, this is rigged. Or maybe the NBA knew how mad they'd be if that actually happened and they would know that people would know that it's rigged.
But
I don't
that
know.
would be that was my devil's advocate for you is just like increasing it. I agree with you. That's awesome. But then what does all these business conglomerates get out of it, you know? And like, how does that
Right.
actually grow the sport? You know, is that like in a beneficial way?
I think the only way it grows a sport is if we can get to a point where there's like 250 dudes. Like my thought process was, if
Yeah,
you've
you
got,
get to know the 92nd best guy in the
you
qualifiers,
have
so then
to,
you actually
you
get to
have to
know
know who
them.
these people
Yeah,
are.
exactly.
And
Yeah.
then those people, like if you're, let's say, just getting into the draw, being, top 250 in the world guarantees that you get in the draw, right? And 4 slams a year, that first round, just for showing up, you're getting a check for 30,000. Yeah, I know taxes coming to that, whatever. And then all of a sudden there's a baseline level pay for people to travel. And it's like, it's this safety net. That
It
was
is,
my thought process.
but then you're looking at qualies, you know, because why should Francis TFO have to play an extra round of main draw just because we're adding guys in, you know? Like I
Right.
think there's I
Unless
I
top
like
32 get
the
it by and no one else does. I don't know.
I like the thought process behind it, but I don't know if that's the best way. Like I've on rain delays and stuff, I've shot the breeze with so many people and thought of so many different ways to change tennis for the better. Like one thing Phil Dent, Taylor's dad, said was like there should be a what's the word? Is stipend the word where it's like if you
Hmm.
finish here during the year,
Yeah,
so say you finish top 100, you get X amount from the ATP. You finish top 200, you get X amount from the
totally
ATP.
agree.
So it's like, and it could go all the way down to 1,000, where you just maybe get like, a few $1,000s from the ATP if you finish top 1,000. You get maybe like $5,000 if you finish top 1,000 at the
That's
end of the
very
year.
similar to the NBA with their media deal. What they noticed a couple years ago is every time they struck a new collective bargaining agreement, whoever was a free agent in that summer were the only people that truly bargained or that truly benefited from the new collective bargaining agreement because they're all getting major raises just because their contract came up at the right time. So
Yeah.
now in the new collective bargaining agreement, what they've done is more of a profit sharing thing, like what you're talking about, where if your ranking's a certain point, you're getting a stipend
Well,
for being
I,
there.
s- I still I still want the prize money, but I'm just saying like on
No, this
top of
is in
that, like,
addition to,
okay,
right.
yeah, yeah.
So that way it's like, yeah, these people are still getting their contract money, but then also everyone collectively is getting cut a check, based on different criteria. And so, like you're saying, based on different criteria, if you're a top 100 player at the end of the year getting this check or that check
I,
or
I
whatever.
don't I don't know how accurate that would be because it's like what if you like get it by like 1 point and you like slide into like the top from 500 to 400, that could be maybe like a 20 $30,000 difference, and you spent most of the year at like 500. You know what I'm trying to say? Like
Maybe
there's
they could do
there's
it
lots
based
of
on
different
how
trial
many
and error.
matches you actually play in ATP main draws. And then
And not
they
only
do
that,
go
like
down how many matches did you play challenger main
think
draw?
about how many guys who would have retired or who would have stopped would just play like a couple matches just to stay there. So like there's a lot of flaws to that
Yeah.
as well, but like I think for the most part that would be all right. I mean, I think my if you gave me like my dream scenario for professional tennis and what would make professional tennis fun again, it would be team tennis, like a legitimate
Oh,
organized team tennis. Because it's like, why do people love their sports? They can get behind a team, they could buy the merchandise, like they love
yeah.
that team. You know, it's like, look, I'm wearing the Pirates are the worst franchise in American history, but I'll die with them. Like they're my team, and it's like I feel like there should be that feeling with tennis players. Like you don't really care if Schwartzman wins or loses, but if he's on your team, like that's your guy. Like you know what I'm trying to say?
Right.
So it's like if it was my dream ideal scenario, I think we would kind of venture away from ATP ITF and kind of get into like a seasonal team thing, which would the players would benefit from because you're not playing 11 months of the year either, you know? Or
Right.
you could do the team thing for half the year and then figure out like money tournaments or like invitationals or stuff the other half of the year. Who knows? Like lots of ways you can go with it.
Yeah, I think the only way they're going to be able to do that is if they can slide the U.S. Open back a little bit closer to summer, and they could move the Australian Open in a little bit closer to like move it from January to you know what I
The
mean?
problem,
So it creates more off time, so then you can have that other season.
well, you would need a live tour. You would just need somebody with stupid amounts of money, with copious
Yeah.
amounts of money, who would pay these guys enough to miss the slams and to
Oh,
experiment with it. You know what I'm trying to say? Like the only way it would work is you would
yeah.
have to legitimately outbuy the ATP or ITF because
Wild.
it's
Wouldn't that be
like
fun to watch? Could you imagine the tennis would be in the news? Oh
That's what
gosh.
I'm saying. And like my other suggestion to make tennis better would have been there would be, again, it's like similar to the live style where you would have maybe the year end top 10 guys.
Yeah.
They draft teams of like 10 guys, or maybe even like 15 guys, and there are, let's call it we'll call it like the tennis cup for the sake of the name. There will be tennis cup tournaments. So like all the slams are tennis cup tournaments. So at specific tennis cup tournaments, your team could rack up X amount of points. And at the end of the year, instead of
Yeah.
having the ATP finals, which are nobody cares about, the guys just show up to collect massive checks, you would
Yep.
have team finals. So it's like if Djokovic drafted X amount of players and Nadal drafted X amount of players, at the end of the year, your team got X amount of points from doing well or not doing well. And at the end of the year, that last one would be a team tournament with your team. Like I don't know, just like I said, I've shot the breeze with so many other tennis players that
Oh, I love that. It's
we've
like
had so many
collecting
ideas.
points per round throughout the year to decide what
Yeah,
your
I mean,
ranking is at the end, and then use it to have a team tournament. And then you can play clinch like college style.
I don't know. Like I said, I hate sound like a negative, pessimistic person, but
No,
I feel like tennis has so many better ideas than what it is right now. I don't know.
there's a lot of ways they could go with it. I totally agree with that. I mean, I think there's a lot of potential, and they do need to experiment with stuff, and I'd love to see them experiment with stuff. Why I don't see any reason. What are they hurting by taking a risk and experimenting at the lowest level? Like, why can't they totally try to implement one of those things at the Futures Tour? And like that whole that tennis cup thing, I think is great. Like, it would
It's
not
not
take
about
much for
the.
them to implement.
It would literally take nothing. You just name X amount of events or like certain events, tennis cup events. So the
Yeah,
points not only are ATP points, but you get your team points.
yeah.
But they're never gonna take a risk because there's no need. Like it works. What the system works right now. Like they're I think
They're still
their
profiting.
model is if it's not broke, don't fix it.
We don't want that though. We want we
Because
the
we love the sport, like I truly I love tennis. Like I want to be involved in tennis the rest of my life, whether it's coaching, whatever it is. So it's like it's different for guys like me and you, but I think for the guys who like own the businesses and the organizations, like I said, if it's not broke, they don't want to fix it.
yeah. Do you have any other tennis hot takes? That was a pretty good one.
Also, if you couldn't already tell, like what are we like 50 minutes in? I'm the guy on the changeover who has the stupidest ideas, and Jody and Justin always they reel me in. I have the stupid questions and ideas. I'm not afraid to ask.
did, they, did they try to get you on a tangent, or they just try to get you to ask ridiculous
No, they
things?
they call me down. Like one time I was gonna ask Tristan. I was like my opening question, because I like to open the podcast with a question because it calms things down. My question was, do you think there should be two tours? Do you think there should be a tour of 6'3" and over, or 6'4" and over, and a tour of 6'3" and under, and how would that affect tennis?
Yeah.
Like stupid stuff like that. Like that's what goes through my mind if you're wondering. you know?
I've never heard that take, but I can understand why.
Yeah, oh, it's when you lose a match and you played unbelievable, but the guy just you couldn't break him. You start thinking like, wow, like is that even legal?
You're like, is this the same thing? Are we playing the
Yes,
same
yeah,
game?
we're not playing the same sport.
There's no way. This is mini tennis for you. This is bull. There's no way.
So yeah, that's the type of stuff that goes through my mind.
Oh yeah, no, I love that. That could be that needs to be, they need to make that an entire segment. It's like you don't even have to expand on it. It's like just like once every so many episodes, and now we're back with ridiculous questions with AJ. And you just go through and you list all of those questions you thought of that they didn't let you use, and you just list them off. I think
Like
that would be
another
solid.
one, another one for me was nothing against Carlos Alcaraz, but I think him taking over the role as like the tennis giant is bad for the sport. That was my question. I was like, do you think Carlos Alcaraz being, the next big thing is bad for the sport? And I was like, everybody's like, what do you mean bad for the sport? I was like, well, then because it would keep the sport the same. I think if the sport you start seeing slams where just random guys win slams, like you get like Tsitsipas, this slam, and Medvedev that slam, and Rublev the next slam. Like people would, I think the general population of tennis would go down because a lot of people would go to watch Nadal, Federer, Djokovic, and like you go to these tournaments, like Alcaraz's stadium's full, but if you watch two other guys in the top 30 play, their stadium's not full. So my take on it was that if he doesn't do well, or if his level drops down to, about even
Hmm.
with all the other top guys, tennis will have to make a change, because it's like they're not selling anything out,
Right.
Like it's
Well,
kind of
yeah,
like
that's an interesting way to think about it.
if it's not broke, don't fix it. I think it would expose the brokenness of tennis, and they would have to fix it.
If all of a
Again,
sudden
like it
the
was a
hype
stupid
machine isn't
question.
hyped. Yeah.
It was a stupid AJ question, but like those are the types of questions I bring to the table.
That's an interesting take. I've not heard that, but I get it. I see what bunny trail you're trying to go down,
Yeah, because
but
I mean, I was talking with my coach, and he's like, Elkraz is keeping the sport alive, and I was like, wouldn't it be great to not see the sport die, but like see it, you know, almost die and get resurrected. It's
yeah,
like I don't want tennis to do bad, but some to wake up, the wake up tennis and be like, hey guys,
I
you
don't
gotta change course here.
I don't care what anybody says. The best thing that could happen for tennis would be Grigor Dimitrov winning a slam. And I stand by that. The man, we need someone from the quote unquote lost gen. Now that these top guys are finally,
Well,
Raonic
I
couldn't
think
get over the hump, neither could Nishikori, and all of a sudden you got this dude that's 31 that never really had a chance because of Fed and Djokovic and Rafa, and then you've got these younger guys that kind of came up and they're like, oh nope, you still didn't get a chance. It's like, no, we're here. If you're that whole
I think
generation of
an,
people that love tennis haven't been represented and they want a chance.
I think another thing that tennis also needs is like characters. Like I
Yeah.
think Kyrgios, he embodies that a little bit. He kind
Hmm.
of got that bad boy rep. Rune's starting to get it. Like people look at it like it's a bad boy rep, and I look at it like no, like he's helping the
I
sport.
think I think Holger Rune is extremely entertaining.
Yeah,
I
but that's my point. We
I
need more guys like that. Like sometimes I think tennis is too gentlemanly. Like
oh
you know,
yeah.
like
Yeah.
like another one of my wild AJ thoughts was, what if the stadium courts had two courts side by side? So like you go to Arthur Ashe and it's actually two courts next to each other. But
You
then the
mean
players are gonna have to deal with, a little bit of
inside the
chirping and a little bit
stadium
of,
and they're playing at the same time, court by court,
yeah,
side by side?
side by side. That was another one of
Could
my
you
thought
imagine?
questions.
Could you imagine how mad Djokovic would be if like
Deal with
they
it.
called a let because someone else's
Well,
ball
no,
rolled
like
across his
it
court?
would be professionally spaced out. Like they'd probably have like a divider,
But
but
still,
like
you think a ball wouldn't once and he'd be so mad? I mean, even if
no,
they
I
were
don't
that
think
close
those courts are
together.
so massive. Those courts are so massive. I don't think no. If your serve is able to go kick over the sideline onto the next court, you deserve to win the match, anyways. Like those courts are so wide. Have you ever been on like a professionally spaced court?
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
They're massive.
yeah, huge.
Like I don't think if we had two of those side by side,
Yeah,
like I think that would make tennis cool as well. You know,
yeah. No, that would
you
it would
get
be pretty
personalities
sick.
clashing, and yeah.
People be telling each other to shut up. They'd be so
Yeah,
mad.
tennis would get like rowdy. It's like college tennis. Like I think college tennis is a great product. It's an undervalued product.
Yeah, no, I think so too. I think college tennis has a great product. I think I was just having a conversation today. People who listen to the most recent podcast that I posted, we talked about the idea of a great way to grow college tennis, with them talking about moving the individual singles and doubles tournament to the fall, which I think
That's
is the wrong
stupid.
move. It's stupid.
So
It's
stupid.
it's going to affect all your freshmen. It's going to negatively affect those trying to play on the pro tour. But anyway, I think that after your conference team tournament, they should have a conference individual tournament where every team, like say you're in the Big Ten, and every team in the Big Ten gets to put in two singles players and gets to put in two doubles teams, and you see that, you play it out, and you put something on the line other than just a trophy, and you play out a full back draw all the way to third place. Maybe the guy that you put in there normally plays four singles, but all of a sudden they're getting a chance to play a one or a two, from a different team. I just think it would
Yeah,
shake things up. It'd be a really cool experience. And now with them moving NCAA's down to Orlando from the Final
that
Eight
was
on,
so stupid.
now you've got another event that you can rotate around the schools within your conference that can kind of be something that fans can attend that can be a big deal.
It's like
That's what I would like to see.
I told Tristan like we were big rivals with Georgia because we like 3 years before I got to A&M, we moved to the SEC, maybe 2 years. So I was there the full SEC. Like we were deep in the SEC at that point, and the title was essentially between us, Georgia, and then my last 2 years Mississippi State, and they were just our rivals. Like I
Yeah.
from a tennis standpoint, I hated them. I wanted to beat them. Love the team, love the guys off the court, but as a team, we hated them, wanted to beat them. And I would tell you, I went NCAAs to be at Georgia every year. Every year, I'd take NCAAs at the place I don't like the most, than Orlando, Florida. The atmosphere was amazing,
In Georgia?
unbelievable. There were 5,000
Yeah.
plus people.
Yeah, I've seen the
We were
videos. Yeah.
we were playing on the backcourts. We were playing UCLA on the. I don't know if you've ever been there. They have 6 courts up top where it's like a row of 4, then a row of 2, and there's like decent amount of seating. And then they have their main courts where it's their 3 courts with the massive stadium and the box suites and then the little pit. And during NCAAs, they actually build a grandstand over the pit, so it could probably seat upwards of 6,000. So we were playing UCLA up at the top courts, and Georgia was playing USC at the bottom courts, and the roars you would hear, you would swear it's a football stadium. I heard the same things from Kyle Field that holds 92,000. Like it was, but it's so cool. I was like, oh man, I wish I was in there playing, even if the crowd was against me. That sounds so cool, you know?
Yeah, no, I can't imagine. I I've seen the video. Talk about a recruiting opportunity. The media they put out
It's
about,
unfair.
their fans. Oh, it's so unfair. They're gonna get all the top recruits for a while.
They
Like
always do.
they do, but how are you gonna stand up to that? Like
I think in
it's
a weird
crazy.
way, the 4.5 scholarships in men's tennis is cool because it makes teams kind of even. Like I think I don't know enough about women's college tennis to make a statement or an opinion, but I think it's a little more diluted because if there's 8 scholarships, the best schools will just have a stacked team. It's like if you're like a Duke or a Stanford, it's like you could attract anybody, where
Right?
it's like in men's
You could
tennis,
literally
just
you could
sorry, we're
have
out of scholarships, you have to look
yeah,
at somewhere else. Like Texas A&M, horrible place to recruit to. It's a dust bowl.
yeah,
Like I love the place to death, but I would not like say it's the best campus on earth. And
right.
uh and I think we were who
But
we
hey,
were.
recruits, you should go there. AJ endorses it. Let's make sure to make that clear.
No, I went there. I wasn't looking at campuses. I was looking at coaching staff and team, and both were amazing. Like I love Steve and Kevin to death, and I think they're great coaches. But like we would be, I feel like we were a product of other teams not being able to afford us, if that makes sense.
Right? Yeah. No, I does it leads to more parity.
Exactly. So it's
Like,
like, do I want to have to pay for college? No, but from a viewer spectator standpoint, it's pretty cool because you have pretty even teams out there. I mean, look at NCAAs this year. Like I would never have thought UVA would have won it.
oh yeah, no, I
I mean,
think
I haven't been following that much, but like based off of just looking at draws and results and stuff, like I wouldn't have put my money
they
on
were a
UVA.
team that if you were following, they were building momentum. But you're right, if you weren't following closely all year, you wouldn't know that.
But
And
would
so
you,
I get that.
if you had to put like $50 down on one team to win NCAAs, would it have been UVA?
$50 on one team and I can't split
It
it up. I wouldn't have
No,
picked them. No.
would they
I
even
there
been
was some
top
other
five?
they might have been top 5, but it would have been
See, for
close.
for
They would have
for me, they
definitely
wouldn't have
I
been
think
top
they were
five.
definitely in the top 8. I think they were
But
definitely top 8, but you're right.
but
Yeah,
that
no,
was
I
my
wouldn't have
point.
put the
Is like,
$50. Your point's right. Yeah, no, I agree. I think they got hot at the right time, and obviously a very talented team, super talented. But yeah, I think a lot of people would have been putting their money on, let's see, Texas was having a really good season, and obviously a lot of people are really high on Ohio State and have
TCU
been
was
for a
good.
while. TCU had an amazing season. And I think a lot of people would have put, money on those 3 schools. And then there's some other schools that, I could probably list 5 more that would slot in perfectly in that top 4. Um, but yeah, no, that probably would not have been my first pick if I had $50 to put on one team. But yeah, like you said, the parity that creates with the 4.5 scholarships um, is a good thing for sure. I think.
It's a good bad thing.
It is. It is a good bad thing. It causes a problem, but it's also maybe good for the parity of the sport.
It's like a salary. It's like a amateur salary cap.
Yeah, it kind of is. It's I don't know. We'll see. We'll see. I'm gonna be curious to see how the landscape of tennis changes with NIL. I think NIL is going to keep changing the way things work for individual sports because
Do you
I
think that
think
would have? I don't know enough about it. Do you think that would have affected like what benefits would that have gotten me going to A&M? You know, like I was I was ranked I was ranked at one point in all four of my years. I was All American my junior year. So like as a person who's like not like a name brand in college tennis, but I was up there. Like what benefits would that have had for me?
I
You
think it
know?
would have just depended on whether or not the boosters for your program are people that are business owners. If your boosters are people that are business owners, then I think it could have influenced it a lot. And I think that's how it's going to change things. But I also think the way it's going to change things is if NIL is going to start allowing all these people through sponsors to take all this money, is the NCAA for much longer going to be able to hold, put a cap on how much prize money you can take and keep
Tennis
your
is
eligibility?
such an irrelevant one anyways because most kids who are thinking about college are not making more than they're spending anyways, you know? So I
Correct.
think that's an irrelevant fact for men's tennis and women's tennis. That's more for like football, basketball, you know?
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. And so, yeah, it's going to come down to boosters. I think, some of these tennis programs might have boosters that have some major businesses that might be able to, give people money. All of a sudden you've got somebody who's, I don't know, big name. They're the junior Wimbledon champion. And we start to see, these top juniors every year, their, scholarship or not all ending up at one school. And you look at it, what it is, and it'll be because behind the scenes, there's some guy that really loves
Yeah,
tennis,
it's
but he owns a
yeah.
business and he's willing to sponsor these guys and probably willing to even say behind closed doors, yeah, I'll keep sliding you some money when you're ready to try the pro tour.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah, it'll be different.
it'll be different for sure. Oh man, there's a million different ways that we could go, AJ.
Yeah,
It's-
I tend to go off. We were a
I,
bad couple for just normal questions.
I know it's
That's a good problem to have. That's a good
it
problem to have.
it is a good problem to have. I think if we go much longer, we'll have to split this up into two-parter or something. I don't know. It's pretty good. I've got some questions here, and maybe it'll spark
You could
another
rapid
idea
fire
for
them. I'll give you short answers. You could rapid
you.
fire them for me.
Ooh, okay. Yeah, we could do that. Okay, hold on. Like, because we've kind of covered some of them. That's not one. Okay, this is a question I think that's actually valuable for people to hear about, and you just
Okay.
covered on it a little bit when talking about Texas A&M. But before I get into my rapid fire, what was your college recruiting process like?
In what sense? Sorry.
Well, like giving maybe some context to the listener of like, what was your ranking as a junior? How many schools were you looking at? Did they reach out to you? Did you kind of seek them out? Like, what was the, you know what I mean? It's kind of that recruiting is weird in the sense that it's like, are you asking them out? Or are they asking you out? It's kind of like this weird
I was fortunate
dance.
enough where they a lot of schools were asking me out. I actually, if I were to go back again, make sure if you were in my situation, you respond and you are honest with all the coaches. I kind of snubbed some schools that I wish I didn't snub, you know? And like
Yeah.
looking back, and I was just an immature little 17-year-old who didn't know any better. But the process is like I said, be honest with them, let them know what you're thinking, and when you're going to the visits, like I Tristan and I were talking about this in our podcast, that go in there with a professional mindset. Like again, if you're 17, you're probably looking at like which schools have the best parties, you know, which schools have the best looking girls, and so on and so forth. Like you really gotta, as a tennis player, put your tennis first and like look at little things like how much time are they spending on the court, like that they're legally allowed to. Do the guys maybe put in extra time on the court without coaches? Because I think you need that in tennis. Like I don't think
Yeah.
there's enough time on the court. Training facilities. Does your fitness and like your trainers that help you with like recovering and stuff, are they good? Are they legitimate? Like little things as a professional player would look at it, not like as a 17-year-old would look at it.
Yeah.
I
No,
know
I
it's
think
tough
that's all
because the
great.
people are 17, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, but hopefully their parents will listen to this and then they'll share that with them and make them do the right thing. I don't know.
Like I said, like I went to A&M not because it was the nicest place on earth. I went there because I knew that like I've said before in my other podcast that all six guys in the lineup in a couple years, seven guys all had aspirations to go, is that the right word? To go pro. And I knew that it was a good competitive environment. Like every day I could play a different guy of the week. Every day of the week I could play a different guy and it would still be a good match. And like I said, we all had the right mindset. I know a lot of places where guys get very sidetracked at school. I know a lot of guys who told me they went to their school and there's just so many distractions. I thought A&M was like, for me at the time, was the perfect fit as far as like making sure I could stay focused a little bit better. If that makes sense.
Yeah. No, it totally makes sense. You did answer my question. I'm looking through my list of questions over here. I'm not gonna lie. I think you've low key in your own way covered all of them. I mean, there's some slightly different ones here, but I feel like we've pretty much covered them other than telling me what your happiest tennis moment is. That's pretty much it.
Oof. So again, real quick, I'm a pretty pessimistic guy, so I do not do a good job of soaking in the good. I know it's
Okay.
a horrible thing to say and a negative way to end, but like that's a tough one for me to think about. I'd probably reminisce on the bad too much and not on the good. Hmm.
Surely
Hmm.
whether it's even, signing for college or
So
maybe it's a big
so
win
my
that you had as a
freshman
team.
year, one of the coolest ones was we were not expected to be a good team. Like we were expected to be a top 20 team, that year, and we ended up winning the SEC regular season, and then we hosted the SEC tournament, and we played Georgia in the finals. And that whole match, I won my match. I beat the guy I lost to in the regular season, which was kind of cool and made me happy. But the way we won that match, like that one match in particular, with those set of guys, like I wouldn't have won that match with any other guy on my team except those guys.
Mhm.
I think that match will always be with me. You know, like
Yeah, no,
every line played out like a story. Like I could do a whole podcast on that match alone.
yeah.
Like we were losing, we had a rain delay. The rain delay kind of got us that momentum break, and we came back, and like the two guys who were losing turned the match around. Like the whole thing was a story, and like that was, man. After that, like our whole team just felt like we were on top of the world. Because like nobody expected us to be good. Like who is Arthur, who's now like 50 in the world. Like nobody knew who he was. Like Steve took a bet on getting him. Uh, Jordy, who came on, we got lucky because he came on financial aid, so he was kind of like a free scholarship. He wasn't. He's the type of guy, he just went with the flow. I don't know if he was really looking at A&M as much as our coaches, because I trained with him at College Park. Our coaches kind of edged him towards Texas A&M. I chose Texas A&M over Ohio State. Those are my last two schools. I loved Ohio State, and they actually offered me a little bit more money my freshman year, but I chose A&M. And just having us three as like a freshman class who turned out to be like a really good freshman class, but like not at the time on paper it wasn't a great freshman class, but all three of us ended up being like ranked, and all of us ended up being all Americans and had great careers there. I think
What
that
what
that was
years
something that was
what
cool.
years were you at A&M again?
14 through 18.
Trying to think who was all on Ohio State that year of those years that you didn't want to play with. That's clearly
Fun.
what happened. I'm
Well,
just
no,
kidding. I'm just kidding. You didn't
you
want
just
to you
don't
didn't want
like
to
him
be
because you're an
you didn't want
Illinois
to be
guy.
you didn't want to be you didn't want to be friends with Martin Joyce. Is that what it was? I'm just kidding. No, I don't know.
No, I mean it had nothing to do with them being bad. I just really like the guys at A&M. They're my friends for life. Like they're all coming to my wedding.
Oh yeah.
Like I didn't leave any guy out on any of my four teams. That's how close we were. It was insane. Like our Steve made us live together. Like one of our rules was we don't have to live at dorms our freshman year. So we all lived at the same apartment complex, and we all had all just we were not trying to be antisocial, but we only hung out with each other. Like
Yeah.
we'd go
It's
to like our
beyond what a
athlete
frat is. This is
cafeteria.
it's true friendship. You guys
Yeah,
had a
they're
click.
family. They're family.
Yeah. A true
Yeah.
family. No, I get it. And I have no Ohio State hate. I'm a big
Even
I
as a
will
guy, I see you repping the Illinois
no
shirt.
right now.
No, like in your profile picture. I
Oh yeah.
our
Well, Yeah. I mean, I do. I've been to a lot of matches there, but I actually don't. I actually, it's funny. Um, I have a lot of respect for a lot of the guys that end up going and playing there. I think that they're a great program. I'm a big Big Ten fan. I would say it that way. I think Michigan has a super respectable program. I think Michigan State's trending upward. I think Indiana has done a great job of improving their
I
program.
think
Like, you
their
go through.
kryptonite, the Big Ten's kryptonite is that's indoor tennis.
Yeah.
My coach is a massive Ohio State fan. Like he wanted me to go to Ohio State so bad. His daughter's going to Ohio State next year. She's really good at tennis. And I always tell him Ohio State, no matter how good they're going to be, I don't think Ty will ever win a national championship. I even told him before the final here, I was like, Ty's not winning this. And he's always like, he's gonna win. I was like, no, it's an indoor team. Like there's just something about it when good teams are playing good teams, like those little factors, like it's
They
like a guy
matter.
like they matter so much, especially when you're playing indoors, is where it's like the place is tailored towards like Ohio State tennis, and then you go to like a random place in the world to play. It's different. We
Yeah.
played my junior sophomore year. Sorry, I know I'm going off another tangent. I'll make it quick.
Not No, you're
Our
fine.
our
Yeah,
sophomore
there's no
year,
time limit here. You're good.
our sophomore year, we played national indoors. We played Ohio State at Virginia, the Boar's Head complex. We
Yeah.
lost 4-3. The next week we played Ohio State at Ohio State. We lost 4-0. Got rolled. Went up to Illinois and not that we're not an indoor team. We went up to Illinois the week after and we beat Illinois. So like it just beat playing at Ohio, like you guys up in the Big Ten, there's like such home field advantages there.
Right. No, I think there is. Yeah, playing indoor tennis is its own thing. Uh, that does make a difference. Those people, there's a lot of indoor tennis up in Chicago. There's a lot of indoor tennis, throughout the Midwest, and there are people, you can even see it in the junior tournaments results, that like there are some guys in the juniors that it's like, wow, their indoor results are amazing. And then they get to the summer and they play outdoors and they're not winning nearly as many matches because it's a different game. It really
It is a
is,
different
like
game.
how fast it is. It's all crazy. So anyway, AJ, really quick before we forget, I've got two more questions for you. Um, First and foremost, who else do you think needs to come on the Grassroots Tennis Pod? I usually tell people to keep in mind whoever you say, you have to help us get this person on the pod. And I've been encouraging people to give us two names. I've been saying,
Hmm.
a player, whether it's someone pro level, college level, or even a junior that's passionate about the game, and then maybe a community leader or a coach type person. Do you know someone else who you think that has knowledge that needs to be shared in the tennis community?
Where do I start? Somebody that I think first of all, I think it would be cool to maybe get another changeover guy on there, just because they
Okay.
they could tell their side of the story. So like a Jody, Justin, or Evan. Um, for your podcast, as somebody trying to help you, um, I think maybe trying to find somebody at a higher level, because I mean, futures guys are great and they have more knowledge than anybody. I feel like, but if you could get a guy who's interested at the challenger ATP level, who's got a little bit more of a following and maybe different type of knowledge, I think that would be cool as well.
You got to
Um,
give me a name and you got to help me get them. You've got connections I don't
geez,
have. Come on.
geez. Who could I actually? I could just name people, but who could I actually get on here? Hmm.
That's a tough one. I know. That's difficult.
I mean, the easy one would just be say Evan Zoo. I know he'd come on here. Um,
And that
I
would be a
think
good one.
another way would go is I think you're right. I think a coach would be pretty unique too. Maybe Kevin O'Shea. So
Okay.
he's our assistant coach. He has a really unique story at A&M, and he'll talk longer than me. He's an amazing guy. He'd be cool to have on here.
Yeah, no, I would love that. I love talking tennis with
And
anybody,
and he
especially if it's a
could
cool story, like you said.
and who's your main audience? I didn't even ask you that. I'm sorry for not asking you that. Like, are
Do
you
I have an
juniors?
audience? I don't know, man. Like,
Well, I mean, like
I
I think
just target market, I feel like would be,
because I
you
know it's
know,
tennis, obviously. No, we're not talking about like basketball out here, but
I
when
feel
we're
like,
looking at the changeover, we're like, who are we really trying to hit? And we were thinking about at one point maybe getting more into juniors.
mhm.
You know, right now not in a purposeful way. We're like completely ignoring the women's tour. But it's not like we have access to it. Um,
I've had a hard
You,
time nailing down, female guests so far.
like, it's
Because
not
a
like we're
lot of
doing it on purpose. It's just like,
it's just,
I'm here right now at a tournament. Like, we're gonna have Alex Kotzen. Is that how you say his last name? I don't know if I butchered it. He played for Columbia. He's coming on the changeover tomorrow. We're shooting the next episode. But it's just easier for us because we're at men's tournaments, so we'd have to maybe get a girl on board. I'm looking to start a new series on the changeover. So the changeover is like that's the brand name, but I'm gonna do a segment called the Coaches Corner where I just only interview coaches, and it's very Tennessee. So it's like, if
yeah,
you're the average person, you could still watch the weekly grind because we're funny and we're stupid and we're just the boys being the boys. But
it has some
you know,
entertainment for sure. Yeah.
yeah, and
I
then
like
and
the
then
entertainment level of that.
there's the Coaches Corner, which is like if a tennis nut or maybe like a tennis mom or dad could show their kid, so we're always looking at the audiences we could reach in tennis. So like, that's why I'm asking you, like, do you have like a set audience? Because that could
I
also
feel
help
like
with.
I feel like people who are passionate about tennis would enjoy the conversation we've been having on here, but I also feel like it's something that maybe
Like
junior players
juniors.
or parents of junior players could listen to, and they would benefit from it a lot. Or maybe coaches that don't have, a lot of, maybe they don't have, maybe it's somebody who's new into coaching, or maybe that doesn't have a lot of people to bounce ideas off with. Coaches, they need different think tanks and opportunities just to hear people talk about tennis.
And then for me,
Um,
I'd suggest like my assistant coach, because he's a brand he's a brand name college coach. He's a big SEC school. And
right.
like I said, his story's pretty unique. I mean, if you get him on, he'll tell you about how he kind of got to the assistant coach,
Yeah.
and it's kind of like a feel good story that kind of will get everybody else into tennis.
Yeah. No, I would love that. I think that would be
And that
great.
would also reach juniors, and that would reach aspiring coaches.
No, I think that would be a really good one. We'll have to work on getting some of those people you named onto the pod. And before I forget, I want to just give you one more chance here. Can you make sure to give everybody the so they can go check out the pod? Well, where do they need to go to like and subscribe for your podcast?
If I were to give it to you, it'd just go to YouTube and just go to the changeover, and just hit the subscribe button. That's
Hit
what really helps us out,
YouTube. Okay.
just like you, for the monetization, we need the subscribers, because we're getting the views. Actually, we're on target with our views. I know it doesn't seem like much, but we're on target for
Mm-hmm.
monetization. But it's the subscribers. And then on Instagram, it's also, I'm a horrible person. I don't know exactly what it is. I'm pretty sure it's just at the Changeover Podcast, but I'll double check for you right here real quick. It is, yeah, it's just the Changeover Podcast.
Yep.
Yep.
All right. Well, before we get out of here, I just want to say, thank you for coming on to the
Thank you for having
Grassroots
me.
Tennis Podcast. And who knows, maybe this will be the last time. We'll have to check back in at some point. But thank you, just for this conversation, and for all the craziness. I feel like
Yeah,
we
it's for
went
the
down
love
a
of the
lot of
sport.
different rabbit holes for the love of the sport. So if anyone out there that's listening has any follow-up questions for AJ, he's pretty easy to find, on Instagram. But then also feel free to shoot us an email to grassrootstennispod@gmail.com. If you have any follow-up questions, I can reach out to AJ. I can kind of mailbag it and fill you guys in here. If we get so many questions, this just explodes that we have to bring it back on, I'm sure he would love to come back on and answer your questions and go down some more bunny trails with us. Yeah, I'm trying to think if there's anything else. Make sure, guys, if you're listening, to go and give us a like on
And make sure you subscribe.
and
If you liked it,
subscribe.
subscribe.
If you like it, you got to subscribe. We need YouTube
Just a click.
subscribers,
Just tickle the subscribe button for him.
please. We need the follows on Spotify. And if you follow us on Spotify and follow on Instagram, then
All
you
it
get a
takes is a
follow
click.
back on Instagram. We will do follow for follow if you follow both. Yeah, that's all I got. Just takes a click. AJ, thank you so much.
Thank
I
you for having me.
appreciate
This
it.
was fun.
I enjoyed it. And good luck. You got a lot of
Thank you.
tournaments coming up. All right. Take care.